I used to think if a marriage ever ended, it'd be for the usual reasons: cheating, constant fights, or maybe two people just growing apart. But one night, my son asked me an innocent question, so simple, so pure, and from that moment on, everything started slipping out of place. I didn't notice it right away. It wasn't how she smiled at other people. It wasn't even the late nights. It was the smell of solvent in the garage, a forgotten receipt in her car, a sketch of our coffee shop's floor plan with weird little notes scribbled on the side. I don't know when exactly it happened when the cafe, the one I built with my own hands, became part of her escape plan. And I didn't know until the very last moment whether she really planned to set it on fire, with me and our son still nearby. But I knew what I had to do before the flames got a chance to catch. If you think betrayal only means cheating, this story might change your mind. Stick around till the end, and if something about this hits close to home, don't be shy, leave a comment. My name is Daniel. I'm 38. I'm a civil engineer, and I've been living in Denver for almost 2 decades. There's nothing particularly special about me except maybe that I used to think I was one of the lucky ones when it came to marriage. My wife's name is Laura. She's 35. Used to work an office job at a small real estate firm. After the pandemic, she quit. Said she needed something that felt like it belonged to her. Something that wasn't deadlines and spreadsheets. I nodded. 6 months later, the Flower House was born, a little corner cafe, the kind she used to daydream about back when work left her drained. I was the one who renovated the space, built the shelves, redid the floors, crafted the coffee bar from reclaimed mahogany. I'm no barista, but I know how to build a place that makes people want to come back. The shop was registered under her name. Laura said it made taxes easier since it was technically personal business income. I didn't question it. We have a son. His name is Max. He's 6. He looks more like her than me, light brown hair, eyes that always seem to be smiling. Our life wasn't flashy, nothing out of the ordinary, but for the longest time, I thought that was enough, until it wasn't. I started feeling like something was off around June. At first, it was nothing big. Laura began staying late at the cafe more often, saying she needed to do inventory or reorganize supplies. I didn't question it. That shop was her dream, I knew that better than anyone. But then there were nights she didn't come home until almost midnight. She'd always say she turned off her phone and didn't realize how late it was. I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? The doubts didn't really start until one night, while I was doing the dishes and Max was doodling at the kitchen table. Out of nowhere, he asked, "Dad, is Uncle Alex Mommy's best friend?" He said it so casually, like he was asking for another glass of juice. I paused, asked why he thought that, and he just said he saw Uncle Alex holding Mommy's hand the other day. Then he smiled and added that Sarah, his best friend from school, also holds his hand at recess. And that's what best friends do, right? I nodded. I didn't say anything else, but something inside me shifted. Kids don't lie about stuff like that, especially not when they don't even realize what they're saying matters. That night, I lay next to Laura in bed, staring into the dark, wondering how many things I'd ignored simply because I believed trust was enough. A few days later, Laura's car ran out of gas. She called and asked me to take it to the station while she stayed at the cafe. While reaching into the glove box to find her wallet, I spotted a receipt crumpled under some napkins. It was from a hardware store. The items listed rags, a lighter, and 2 cans of industrial solvent. Nothing about it made sense. She hadn't said anything about repairs, and the shop didn't need any deep cleaning or painting. Not that I knew of. I didn't say anything. I just took a photo of the receipt and put it back exactly where I found it. Maybe I wanted to believe I was reading too much into things. But deep down, something had already started to unravel. Like a faint buzzing in the background of an empty room, you try to tune it out. But the more you ignore it, the louder it gets. I can't remember exactly when the real doubt started creeping in. Maybe it was after Max's question. Or maybe it was when I began to notice the way Laura looked at me like something had quietly shifted, and I just hadn't caught on yet. One night, after both Laura and Max had gone to bed, I went down to the garage, months ago. I'd installed a small camera out there just to keep an eye out for mice. I never thought I'd need it for anything serious. I pulled up the feed on my laptop and started scrubbing through footage. At first, it was just the usual stuff, me leaving for work, Max riding his bike, Laura loading boxes. But something in my gut told me to keep watching, day after day, clip after clip. Then, I found it. 2 a.m. last Saturday. Laura walks into the garage, no lights. A man follows behind her, Alex. They're carrying 2 small containers. One of them is a metal canister. I recognized it right away. It's the kind used to store industrial solvents. Together, they open Laura's trunk and start loading the stuff in. No words, no rush, no sound, just 2 people moving with quiet, practiced calm. I didn't sleep that night. It took almost a full week after watching that clip before I let my suspicions go all the way. Up until then, I'd been clinging to innocent explanations. Maybe it was flammable inventory for the shop. Maybe they were just helping each other move supplies. Maybe I was being paranoid. But every time I tried to reassure myself, the image of Laura and Alex in that garage kept replaying in my mind like a scene I couldn't stop rewinding. That morning, Laura rushed Max out the door, said she had an early shift at the cafe. I waited about 10 minutes after she left, then walked into the small home office. Her laptop was still open, in sleep mode. I tapped the keyboard. The screen lit up. I typed in Max's birthday, the password she used for almost everything, from her email to our Netflix account. It worked. I didn't plan to dig deep. I just wanted to understand what was going on. But once I started, I couldn't stop. Inside the D drive was a folder labeled Flower House Paperwork, tucked between old invoices and employee tax forms. Nothing unusual until I saw a file called Panel Mapping-V3 PDF. I clicked on it. It was a floor plan of the cafe, an official one, the kind you'd pull from the city's building department. But this copy had red ink scribbled across it, notes pointing out things like the outlet behind the freezer, a supply cabinet in a blind corner, and the staff room behind the espresso counter, next to one of the red marks. There was a single line that made my skin go cold. No alarm here. I just sat there, staring at the screen. It wasn't definitive. But as someone who's worked construction most of his life, I knew electrical maps only mattered in 2 situations: renovation or sabotage. I went into her inbox next. Most of it was mundane emails from coffee suppliers, invoices, pricing quotes, until I filtered by sender insurance. One email popped up, from a company in Texas. Subject line: policy confirmation, commercial fire coverage. The policy had been purchased 2 months ago. Maximum fire payout $600,000. Beneficiary Laura. Just her. No joint ownership. No mention of me. I'd never heard her say a word about getting separate coverage for the cafe. And there weren't any big withdrawals from our joint account, either. Which meant she used another account. One I didn't know about. I leaned back in the chair, my hands still resting on the keyboard. I felt frozen, numb. I didn't want to believe it, but everything, the notes, the receipts, the footage, the secret policy was pointing to a truth no one wants to face. That the woman who'd held me through 1,000 nights might be planning to burn down everything we built just to start over with someone else. If you've made it this far and something about this story hits close to home, feel free to leave a comment below. I still read every single one. I didn't say anything to Laura for the next 2 days. She didn't seem to notice that anything had changed. She still smiled softly before leaving the house, still brushed Max's hair with her fingers before getting into the car. And me, I started making a plan. On Friday night, I told her Max wanted to spend the weekend at my sister's place in Littleton. Laura didn't argue. She rarely argued about anything these days. I packed Max's clothes, added a few of his favorite toys to the backpack, and drove him over. Right before I closed the door, he looked up and asked if I was coming too. I told him I had something I needed to take care of, but I'd come by later. He nodded and didn't push. My sister didn't ask questions either. We're old enough to understand that sometimes silence is the kindest way to be there for someone. That night, I drove back to the flower house. The shop was closed. I unlocked the door, switched on the dim light, and walked straight to the back. The smell of gasoline wasn't strong, but it was there, faint, just enough to make me pause. It was the kind of chemical scent you'd only catch if you'd worked around industrial cleaners or solvents before. I crouched by the old breaker panel near the wall. Behind the wooden cover, someone had stuffed a rag. It was soft, damp, and gave off an awful chemical odor. I took out my phone and carefully snapped photos of the outlet, the rag, even a few faint scuff marks on the floor. I didn't touch anything. Then I walked to the storage room, the same one marked "No alarm here" on the blueprint. At first glance, nothing looked unusual, but the security camera in the corner had been tilted out of position. From my bag, I pulled out a tiny camera, one I used to monitor job sites when I freelanced. It was about the size of a paperclip, battery-powered, and could magnetically attach to almost any metal surface. I mounted it up high near the vent pipe, where it could see both the electrical panel and the rear exit. I checked that the light indicator was off, activated the motion sensor, and synced it with my phone through a hidden Wi-Fi channel. I spun the lens once to confirm the view. Clean, covered, invisible. Before leaving, I stood still in the cafe kitchen, my hand still holding the keys. The chemical smell from the rag still clung to the air. I looked around one last time. Everything here, the hand-built tables, the pendant light Max once called the pineapple lamp, was something I'd made for Laura so she could have her dream. I didn't go home after that. Instead, I drove to Ian's house, an old college friend who now works with the local fire department. I didn't say much. I just handed him the photos and asked what he thought. He didn't take long. After a quiet moment, he looked up and said, "This wasn't random. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing and wanted it to look like an accident." I nodded, then asked him if he thought I should report it. He told me to go to the police first thing in the morning, and whatever I did, keep Max far away from the cafe. I didn't respond. I just thanked him and got back in my car. Saturday night. Laura said she'd be staying late at the cafe to go over the monthly books. I nodded. I didn't ask anything. I didn't offer to drive her, like I usually did. Instead, I sat in my car, parked in an empty lot 2 blocks away from the shop. The temperature had dropped. Fall in Denver always felt colder than I remembered. I turned on the heater, plugged my phone in, and pulled up the live feed. Every second on the screen felt heavier than the last. Around 2 a.m., the motion sensor picked something up. Alex entered through the back door. The lights stayed off. He wore a hoodie, the hood pulled up, and carried a black bag in one hand. Laura was already inside, waiting. She had on a thick coat, her hair tied up, and wore black kitchen-grade rubber gloves. They looked at each other briefly, no words, just a nod, like they both knew exactly what came next. They walked straight to the storage room, moving with the kind of rhythm that only comes from rehearsed routine. Laura opened the supply cabinet and pulled out a clear plastic bottle. Alex crouched by the old outlet, pouring liquid around it, the exact spot marked on the schematic. Laura wiped the wall with a cloth, leaving behind a faint shiny smear near the baseboard. I sat in my car and watched the whole thing unfold. There was this sharp, hollow sting in my chest, like something between betrayal and disbelief. My hands were cold when I reached for the phone. I dialed 911. The police arrived in under 8 minutes. I watched them through the rearview mirror as the cruiser rolled up silently. Lights off. Stopping just outside the cafe, there was a brief yell, a hard knock on the door, then the crash of it swinging open, then silence. I stepped out of the car just in time to see 2 officers walking Laura and Alex out in handcuffs. They were told to face the wall. The evidence was still scattered on the floor: solvent bottles, a lighter, a trash bag reeking of gas. Laura turned her head just a fraction, just enough for our eyes to meet for 1 second. And in that second, I saw it. Shame. Not surprise. Not fear. Just the heavy, silent recognition of a truth neither of us had been willing to say out loud. That this marriage had ended a long time ago. Tonight just made it official. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, hands in my coat pockets, watching a dream I built with my own hands come undone, not with fire, but with the choices of the person I once loved. I didn't go home that night, after they were taken away in handcuffs. I just drove wandering aimlessly through the northern suburbs. No destination, no plan. I just wasn't ready to return to that house, that kitchen, the same kitchen where, just this morning, she stood pouring coffee and asked if I needed a jacket before heading out. Around 5 a.m., I pulled into the lot near the police station. The sky had started to turn, and the air was bitter cold. The officer on duty recognized me and brought me into a small waiting room. He told me I could listen to the recorded statement if I wanted. I nodded. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it, but I couldn't come up with a reason to say no. Laura admitted to everything, clearly, calmly. No excuses, no tears, no panic. She said it was Alex who brought it up first. Not the fire, just the idea of a new life. A small coastal town in Texas, somewhere they had passed through once on a supply run. That idea came to her like smoke light, fleeting, far from pressure, far from me, far from those cold, silent dinners. And then, slowly, Alex introduced a solution. He told her the cafe was failing, in debt, rent going up, that she was only keeping it alive to save face for me, for Max. Then one night, he made the suggestion buy a fire insurance policy, $600,000. If the cafe disappeared in a technical accident, no one would get hurt. Nothing would be lost, just a clean slate. A brand new beginning. Laura said she refused at first, said it was insane. But Alex kept pushing, night after night, telling her she had nothing left here, that she deserved happiness, that Max would be okay, that starting over wasn't wrong, only the way people judged it made it seem that way. She said she wanted to believe that she wasn't a bad person. She just wanted to live for herself for once, after all the years of being a wife, a mother. And so, eventually, she said yes, just like that. I sat with that part for a long time. Not because of the money, not because of Alex, but because of how effortlessly she explained it all, like it was nothing. This woman who once called the flower house the dream of her life, now ready to burn it down just to start over with someone else. No need for a proper ending, no need to look back. Just enough money. And a story that sounded like a reasonable excuse. Laura kept repeating that she never meant to hurt me or Max. She said it over and over, like she was trying to convince someone, maybe even herself. But she didn't deny that if it had happened while we were still nearby, it would have just been an unfortunate risk. That's where I paused the recording. I nodded, thanked the officer, and stepped back outside. Morning had arrived. The cold brushed against the skin beneath my coat sleeve. I opened the car door, sat down, and let the silence stretch just a little longer. That was it. Just that. Before I drove away. The sentencing took place on an early winter morning. The final session after 3 days of hearings centered around one question: was Laura's action a moment of emotional recklessness or a calculated plan? I sat in the back row. Her parents were beside me, their coats still damp with morning frost, faces drawn from lack of sleep. They knew I had taken Max to stay with my sister, far away from the courthouse, far from the weight of this moment. Still, they gently asked if they could visit him once everything was over. I nodded. No need for words. Laura was brought into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, collar pulled high against the cold. She kept her head down the entire time, only lifting it when the judge read the prosecution's final statement. Her lawyer did what he could, tried to argue she had been manipulated by Alex, that she had no criminal record, that she was just overwhelmed by debt and emotion. When it was her turn, Laura spoke softly. She asked the court to consider her circumstances, said she was willing to make restitution, willing to enter early rehabilitation. All of it went on record, but the judge didn't flinch. He turned the pages of her file, citing the undeniable facts: the insurance policy she signed on her own, the chemicals bought from multiple stores, the camera footage documenting the entire preparation. The court found that the plan had reached execution, and if police hadn't intervened when they did, The consequences could have been far worse. The sentence was read slowly, 6 years in prison, with no chance of early release or parole for the first 3. Alex received a lighter punishment, 2 years probation and partial restitution. Laura's shoulders trembled slightly. Her hands clutched the edge of the defendant's stand, knuckles pale. Her mother broke down in tears. Her father gripped his knit cap in both hands and never took his eyes off his daughter. When the hearing ended, Laura was led out, but just before turning toward the holding area, she looked back and whispered something. I couldn't make out the words. Her mother told me later Laura had asked them to visit Max whenever they could, and to tell him she was sorry she wouldn't be home for his 7th birthday. I left the courthouse after them. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of snow. Her parents stopped and asked if Max would be ready to see them that weekend. I told them he was always happy to see his grandparents. They nodded, thanked me, and quietly got into their car. No one mentioned the sentence. We all understood the real cost of betrayal had begun long before the trial, and it would last long after the cell door closed. I contacted a broker to sell the cafe. I didn't renovate, didn't reinvest. I left everything as it was. The chemical stain on the wall, the scorch marks by the outlet. The buyer didn't ask questions. I didn't offer any answers. I used the money to move to a smaller town near the Western Range. Bought a house with a backyard big enough for a small woodworking shed. Max has his own room. I have the silence I needed to start over. The price of betrayal isn't prison. It's not having anyone to call home when the sun goes down. It's watching the one person you once built a dream with become just another name in a criminal record. And if there's anything more bitter than loss, it's the moment you realize they were willing to trade you long ago. You just trusted them too much to see it. These days, I still make coffee in the morning, still walk Max to school, still listen to music in the garage while cutting wood. There's nothing extraordinary about my new life, but there's no fire burning in my chest anymore. I made it through, and I'm still here. Thanks for listening all the way through. If you've ever gone through something like this, feel free to leave a comment. Maybe someone out there will see a bit of themselves in your story. Hit like if you believe that sometimes. Silence is how we survive betrayal. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Every day,